Hello everybody, I'm Ezran. Welcome to something that's different from my usual content. You see, in a lot of my spare time, I just couldn't stop thinking about the Galar region map that was shown during the Pokémon Sword and Shield reveal trailer. There were so many interesting landmarks, and I couldn't help but wonder how much of the game we'd be able to figure out by doing research into their real-world origins. Now look, I know I'm far from the first person to release a quote-unquote analysis of the region, but the ones I saw never seemed to dig very far beyond the surface. It's my goal to make this analysis the most comprehensive it can be. By speculating on this map, we won't just learn about United Kingdom culture, but we'd also be able to infer what new types of Pokémon we'd be able to find in each location, what trials we'd face in gyms across the land, and if my hunches are correct, we may even be able to figure out the plot of the game. With this video, I'm not just setting out to try and point out what you can see plainly by zooming into the map. Rather, I'm going to try and identify the potential inspirations for everything you see on that map, and try to determine everything I can about the game, down to even the minute details of the story. So don't sob, because we're not going to make any rookie mistakes as we head down this fiery rabbit hole. I'd like to begin by inspecting the general shape of the map. It has been made abundantly clear that the region is based on the United Kingdom. After all, if we couldn't figure that much out, this video wouldn't exist. That being said, we'll have to remember that the geography is not going to line up perfectly with that of the United Kingdom. For example, towns take up a great deal of the map, and this would not happen in real-world scale. Now, in order to see the region's similarity to the United Kingdom, we'll need to turn this map upside down. As a map teacher, I know there are two ways to transform the map. The most direct way would be to use a reflection across the x-axis, thus reversing north and south. However, I have reasons to believe that that is not what was done. The map itself is the United Kingdom upside down, but based on theories I'll be sharing throughout the video, I have reason to believe that not only north and south were reversed, but also east and west. This means that instead of reflecting the map, the developers rotated it by 180 degrees. And as I will demonstrate with the compass image on the left, this not only reverses north and south, but also east and west. The reversal of east and west will play a key point in finding the origins of what we see on the map. I'll be referencing this fact when it becomes relevant, but just keep it in mind for now. One last thing. At the end of the day, this is a single image from an unreleased video game. The developers could be taking any number of creative liberties with their designs, and I am going to try and take that into account with a few of my theories. Also, since I'm not someone who's actually working on the game, this is all pure speculation and theory on my part, but I'm hoping to provide enough evidence to support what I say. Let's begin with the southernmost town on the map. Since this map is an upside-down take on the United Kingdom, we can believe that this is based on Scotland, the northernmost region of the United Kingdom. In order to locate this town, I took a look at the most prominent features on the map, those being the lake, the train station, the mountain, and the nearby forest. There is a town in Scotland that fits all those criteria: Fort William. The town is known for being close to the largest mountain in the British Isles, Ben Nevis. It's also notable for its steam train, the Jacobite, or as most people know it, the Hogwarts Express. Yes, this town was used in the making of the Harry Potter movies. I bring this up because I know the developers can only pick a handful of towns from the region in order to keep the game's length in check, meaning that they would probably stick with the ones that have the most notoriety. As for the lake, I am showing a satellite image, and I believe it suggests that the lake is based on Loch Lynn. Note the small island that you can see in the middle and the overall round shape. for story purposes and for sake of condensing Scotland for the game, I believe they may at least reference Loch Ness in this lake, with NPCs, maybe even our professor in the adjacent purple house, reporting some creature, maybe even a legendary Pokémon in the lake. This is despite the shape of Loch Ness being much thinner than the one we see on the map. The town is also home to the Caledonian Canal, which as the name suggests is close to the Caledonian Forest, which is a declining rainforest. The fact that it's a rainforest could explain why it appears so misty and foggy on the map. This is a surviving section of what was formerly the Great Wood of Caledon, a boreal forest in the Scottish Highlands. According to the International Boreal Forest Research Association website, a boreal forest is defined as forest growing in high-latitude environments, such as the Scottish Highlands, where freezing temperatures occur 6 to 8 months, and trees are capable of reaching a canopy cover of 10%. I've put an image of the Caledonian Forest side by side with the image of the forest that we see in the reveal trailer. I'd like you to take note of how the fog might suggest the cold temperatures referenced in the boreal forest definition, and how the canopy cover is so thin that you can actually see all those fog clouds right through it. Back to the boreal forest for a moment though, we also may want to make note that local, regional, and global populations benefit from the ecosystem of these forests, namely for fishing, hunting, leisure, spiritual activities, and economic opportunities. On that note, it's reasonable to assume that the residents of our Scottish hometown are going to be using the rainforest for resources. It would also be a good choice in forest for creating unique new Pokémon designs. Some flora and fauna that caught my attention during my research include the peacock butterfly, the strawberry spider, the red squirrel, and the twin flower. I think the strawberry spider is a particularly strong candidate for a Pokémon design. I can imagine a large, brightly colored strawberry with small spider legs and big eyes that have 3 lashes each. However, those are mere examples. If you'd like to come up with your own designs for Pokémon based on the area, you can search up the Caledonian Forest for yourself, or even the Cairngorms National Park in which the forest lies. If we proceed north from the Fort William town, we'll find ourselves in a clearing with 2 very large bodies of water. Many before me have said this is the Lake District, due to its large lakes. And I agree, but to get a little more specific, I believe one of those lakes is Windermere. Also, the fact that the name of the area has manifested itself in a literal sense has larger implications for what other landmarks of this world could be. This area has large lakes because it's the Lake District. I believe this is the first of many naming conventions like that we will see in Galar. There are 2 other things in this area that I wish to note. First off is the turret we see in the northwest. This landmark is what helped me settle on this area being based on Windermere, as opposed to being based on another lake area in Scotland, known as the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. I believe, based on the turret's shape, that it's representing Ray Castle, the grounds of which include the lakeshore of Windermere. This castle is known as the former residence of author Beatrix Potter, who wrote The Tale of Peter Rabbit. The other item I wish to draw attention to is the large stone spire we see in the southeast. This is our first example of a megalith. Megaliths are large stone structures, and the United Kingdom is filled with them. The one we see here is known as a menhir, which is a singular large standing stone. As we continue our analysis, we'll come across more and more types of megaliths across the entire map. This next city is one that I find to be incredibly interesting, but in order to understand my theory behind it, we'll need to take a quick detour from the map and look back at the game's reveal trailer. In one shot, we see what is clearly a gym in the Galar region, modeled after a stadium. On the front of this building, as well as in the Japanese logos for the games, we see a half-blue and half-red circular symbol. Later in the reveal trailer, when we visit this red-walled city, we briefly see that symbol again. However, this building looks nothing like the other stadiums on the map. As I researched, I looked to find a city with history that could inspire the steampunk aesthetic, while also having a stadium within a large exterior building. This led me to Halifax. The building in question is based on Peace Hall. It is a large building with a church tower, so it fits the general shape we see on the map. Furthermore, it was a large textile mill that saw redevelopment during the Industrial Revolution, hence the steampunk theme. Nowadays, Peace Hall has been renovated as a tourist attraction and features, wait for it, a courtyard intended to host a variety of events, including concerts, theater, markets, sporting events, and even an ice rink. That is why we see the gym symbol on this building. This is just a different type of stadium, likely one that focuses on musical elements. The hall dates back to 1779, when it was built as a cloth hall for trading quote-unquote pieces of cloth. For those wondering, the word pieces was put in quotes on account of it's actually a unit of measurement. While Peace Hall has that church tower of its own, the tower we see on the map could also be represented by the Wainhouse Tower. The Wainhouse Tower is an extravagant tower on the southwest side of Halifax. It was originally designed to serve as a chimney for nearby dye works owned by the namesake John Wainhouse. It was meant to be linked to a factory via an underground duct, but was never actually used as a chimney. Today it's become a tourist attraction that tourists can climb, and at the top they can have a photo taken by drone. Yes, you heard it here first, this may very well be proof that we're finally going to see a drone in a Pokémon game. I know, groundbreaking news. On a brighter note, however, let's assume that this game has a day-night cycle similar to the one that we saw in Sun and Moon. These locations can be expected to look very different between the two times of day, and this tower is no exception. The real Wainhouse Tower actually lights up at night, and I would fully expect the same from this tower in the game. From this city, we can head west to find a clearing featuring a cave, a purple-roofed building, and some tracks. You'll notice the purple-roofed building has two chimneys, which I believe means that it is based on a factory of sorts, namely a colliery. One of the most prominent collieries I could find was the Chatterley-Whitfield colliery. I've put up a comparison shot on the right. The Chatterley-Whitfield colliery is a disused coal mine on the outskirts of Chell, Staffordshire in Stoke-on-Trent. It was the largest mine working the North Staffordshire coalfield, and was the first colliery in the United Kingdom to produce 1 million tons of saleable coal in a year. Given how much coal mining was a factor in the Industrial Revolution, it would be easy to assume that the mine we see further left is a coal mine. However, we get an inside view from the reveal trailer that suggests something else. In the cave walls, we see many pieces of colorful rock lighting the way. It would be easy for some to assume that these colorful stones are merely a friendly replacement for coal, so as to not invoke thoughts of coal miners working in harsh, sometimes deadly conditions. However, I believe that these stones actually have a real-world influence, instead of being some random kid-friendly design choice. Instead of coal, these deposits are based on another substance mined across the United Kingdom, known as fluorite. First off, many types of fluorite are known to glow when exposed to UV light, which can be emitted by the lanterns we see lining the tunnel. The word fluorescence is actually drawn from the name fluorite. As for why fluorite was mined across the United Kingdom, it is a source of a substance known as hydrogen fluoride, and to oversimplify things a bit, that is merely something used in the production of steel and aluminum wares, such as cooking utensils. This is one example of an in-game location that I can't narrow down to a specific real-world site, since there are so many fluorite mines across the nation. If we head north from the mine, we reach a deceiving town. A cursory glance would tell you it's the village of Cernabis, based solely on the presence of a giant figure etched into the hill. While this hill is more likely than not inspired by that very giant, I do not believe the town to be Cernabis. My predecessors in the analysis department believe that the settlement is based on Avebury. But when I came across Avebury in my own research, a few details about the town caused me to think differently. For one, this town is home to one of our stadium gyms, and I was not able to find any major stadium near Avebury. Second, the river shown on the map is quite large in scale, and while Avebury is near a river, the scale didn't quite match up. Finally, and most importantly to my theory, are the two large stone archways we see on opposite sides of the stadium. While we were back in the Lake District, I mentioned that we would see a variety of megalith structures in England. Avebury is known for a set of stone circles. However, that form of megalith is not especially tall. Yet the arches we see on the map appear to be taller than the actual houses. Again, when creating a region, I imagine that the developers are going to draw most, if not all, of their inspirations from the most notable landmarks in the area. And what stone arches are more renowned in the UK than Stonehenge, which does not seem to manifest itself anywhere else on the map. The arches of Stonehenge are certainly tall enough to meet the criteria shown on the map. We will see one more set of megaliths on the map, but it should be clear why it's not Stonehenge once we get there. In my research, I came across one town that met the criteria of having a stadium, being near a major river, and being in close vicinity to Stonehenge. That town, ironically only 2 letters away from Avebury, is Amesbury. First off, the fact that this settlement is near Stonehenge explains the large archways in town, though representing Stonehenge itself in a condensed form. Then there's their stadium, Bonnymead Park, which is an outdoor grass field where the local football team plays, or soccer if you're a filthy American like me. The outdoor nature of this stadium lends itself perfectly to the fact that the stadium is the grass-type gym we see in the trailer. The town lies on one side of the river Avon, a river large enough to be the one shown on the Galar map. We can even see a stone bridge connecting this town to a route in the east. Amesbury has just such a bridge in the west. This is why I wanted to make it clear at the beginning of the video that I think east and west are reversed between the real world and Galar. This is not the only time I'm going to be referencing that argument. So, now I'm sure you're wondering about that giant in the hill. Again, I believe with plenty of other people who have said that it's based on the Cernabis giant. The designers probably just moved it here in order to condense the world. Alternatively, if this town is indeed based on the Stonehenge area, it could instead be there to represent the crop circles that tend to pop up. Could this giant be representing an alien conspiracy? It does seem to have an antenna for a tail. Or, as long as we're talking about beings from another world, could this be their way of getting the Ultra Beasts from Sun and Moon into this game? The idea that maybe they're aliens? That does it for the grassy town to the west. But what if we set out to the lower level of the east instead? Stonehenge is far from the only megalith in the United Kingdom. As for this sandy area near the port city, I believe it's based on Dartmoor National Park. This is where a majority of England's stones can be found, including a pair of stone rows like the ones lining the path at Merivale Prehistoric Settlement. It can be hard to see the second row of stones in the photo I've chosen, so I've taken the liberty of drawing in black lines to show their location. That being said, Dartmoor is home to a slew of stones. I wonder if people would agree that this region rocks? Anyway, my point is that I've shown an example of a stone avenue that the designers could have drawn inspiration from, but the fact remains there are other possible inspirations in the same region. and it might not be based on one specific example. As an alternative, here is a picture of the Haytor rocks, which also feature a stone avenue. As for the larger monument in the region, it is another form of megalith known as a dolmen. A dolmen is defined as a single-chamber megalithic tomb, usually consisting of 2 or more vertical megaliths supporting a large, flat, horizontal capstone, also known as a table. The best match I could find to the one in the location was the Tredeviquoit, pictured on the left, though it could be based on any dolmen megalith found throughout the country. You may have also noticed 2 bridges that cross over the pathway towards these megaliths. As I continued my research, I found that the placement of these bridges further supports my theory that this is Dartmoor. You see, Dartmoor's southern border is marked by a major road, the A38, which is part of the Devon Expressway. This expressway features bridges that cross over the Dartmoor River. It would seem for gameplay purposes, however, that the river has been drained, leaving the area dry. This is likely to give some variety in the biospheres of the region. What's more interesting, though, is that this road not only clues us into where this sandy rock area is, but also plays a role in determining the location of our next city. Let's follow this road to the east. The road leads us to the seaside city featuring a lighthouse and another stadium gym. Researchers before me suggested that this area corresponds to Birkenhead and the New Brighton Lighthouse, but I completely disagree. I eliminated Birkenhead as a possibility when I saw that the New Brighton Lighthouse was in the ocean, while the one we see here on the map is clearly positioned on land. The one on the map also has distinct red and white stripes, which are completely absent from New Brighton. And do you see what I see directly to the left of the lighthouse? Those are cliffs. There are rolling green hills present on this stretch of otherwise concrete landscape. For my own research, I found a list of every lighthouse in the United Kingdom and checked pictures of every single one. There were surprisingly few that had the same red and white striped pattern that we see on the map. Between the stripes and the cliffs behind it, I reached the conclusion that this lighthouse was Smeaton's Tower, thereby making the rest of the town a representation of Plymouth. Plymouth is referred to as Britain's Ocean City, so it's not a stretch to see the designers included in the game as this region's coastal town. Not only this, but remember how I said that the A38 road leads to this city? Yes indeed, one can travel along the A38 to go from the southern border of Dartmoor to Plymouth. Smeaton's Tower is positioned in Hoe Park, which bears a striking resemblance to the green cliffs on the map. As for the stadium and gym, it really depends on the overall design that the developers are going for. We don't know for certain if all the stadiums in the gym are based on football stadiums, but as I mentioned back in Halifax, I hazard to guess that each stadium has its own distinct event. For example, while the grass stadium seems to host football, I believe that the one in Halifax, as I mentioned earlier, is going to host a concert, and that this one here in Plymouth is likely to host swimming or water sports. As such, while it's not a stadium per se, I believe the position of this gym is based on the Tinside Lido, a large pool which, as shown in the picture, is also surrounded by ocean water. Our next stop lies just to the north of the city, and I have some exciting news. I've found whales! No, not those kind. I found the nation of Wales. Remember that since East and West are reversed, it makes sense that Wales, which is usually to the west of England, is in the east of the Galar region. Now, just like the Lake District was filled with lakes to match its title, this area full of snow is likely a winter portrayal of Snowdonia National Park. The park is known for its glaciers, which explains the floating pieces of ice we see in the southeast. The border is an interesting place. You see those 4 castle walls filled with dirt? I propose that this is the area of Denbighshire. Denbigh Castle and town walls were a set of fortifications built to control the lordship of Denbigh after the conquest of Wales by King Edward I in the year 1282. This also acts as a gatehouse. Moreover, I believe it's a combination of that castle as well as Bottlewoodin Castle in North Wales. For you see, while the walls resemble a castle in Denbigh, the inside contains what appear to be trenches used during the World Wars. Those are more reminiscent of Bottlewoodin Castle. Next, I want to focus on the large building with the triangular roof that we see in front of the stadium. We see that it has 4 supporting columns in what appears to be a portico. In order to narrow down the origin of this building, I'm going to zoom in on its appearance in the reveal trailer. This might get a little blurry, but bear with me. Pay attention to where the shading of the roof's edge breaks off. You see, it happens in a few places where the columns connect. To make it clear what I'm talking about, I'm going to draw in a yellow line over the shaded sections. Now what I'm interested in is the shape of the breaks in the shading. If you look closely between where the yellow line breaks apart, you don't just see a rectangular base at the top of the column. We can also make out 2 circular shapes on either side. Finally, that one college class I took on architecture is going to pay off. I learned that columns come in a variety of types based on the shapes in the base at the top. 3 of these types of columns are Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, which I've taken the liberty of showing in the bottom right as a point of reference. From this zoom in, I've concluded that the columns on the building are Ionic. This made it easier to research the building, as I knew I had to look for one that had 4 Ionic columns and a triangular roof. Ultimately, this brought me to the Swansea Museum. The Pokémon series is no stranger to including museums, so this could mean a few things. For one, this could be the area where we bring a fossil to have it resurrected in Galar, meaning that we'll have found the fossil Pokémon prior to this point, and that we'll be able to add them to our team once we reach this building. This is also likely the place where the player will be able to walk around and read up on the lore of Galar, kinda like the library in Valley City and Sun and Moon. If prevailing theories are correct, we could very well see stories of the war with Kalos and artifacts from the destruction. However, I'll have more to say on that potential backstory towards the end of the video. This just leaves the stadium gym itself. Wales is home to the Cardiff International Sports Area, which hosts a large number of sporting venues. However, given the icy terrain of the rest of the area, as well as the fact that each stadium seems to have its own sport, I would be shocked if this gym wasn't based on an ice arena, the sport on the inside consisting of ice hockey and/or figure skating. Moving west, we see a set of mountains featuring a Dugtrio carving. And believe it or not, that Dugtrio carving may actually be our best clue as to what this area is. In the area of Yorkshire, there is a mountain climbing challenge that people may undergo, simply called the 3 Peaks Challenge. 3 peaks, 3 heads on Dugtrio, the symbolism is pretty straightforward. We can even compare the layout of these peaks to those in the real world. But, of course, we'll have to turn the map upside down to see the full resemblance. The area is full of water, likely from the mountain springs, and features what is most likely a ground-type stadium gym, again with Dugtrio being our point of reference. However, the most prominent feature on this mountain is also the most baffling. Because of its mysterious nature and some tie-ins it has to other theories of mine, I'll be coming back to the conspicuous mountain painting towards the end of the analysis. It may also be worth mentioning that not far from these mountains would be a cave system, one of the largest in the United Kingdom, known as the 3 Counties system. This could give us some more areas to explore and more trainers to fight, as well as being a place where all this water originates. In the meantime, let's talk about the forest to the north. The bioluminescent mushrooms here probably remind you of the Generation 7 Pokémon Morlul, and that is for a good reason. Morlul's mushrooms are based on those of the Mycena group, which is found prominently in Europe, mainly near wet woodlands. Given this forest position right near the coast and mountain springs, it's not a stretch to assume that those types of mushrooms could grow here under the laws of nature. The presence of these bioluminescent mushrooms, in tandem with the fact that the area appears dark and moonlit, not to mention the style of cottages, suggest that this is a fairy-type stadium gym. As for what event the stadium would hold, I believe if we're going with a fairy theme, that it would be a dance stadium. But why is this area so dark? Well, much like the peaks, I believe we're looking at an area in Yorkshire Dales, or possibly North York Moors, which is not too much further away. These are two of the many examples of national parks in the United Kingdom that are designated as a DSP, or Dark Sky Preserve. These are areas usually surrounded by a park or observatory that restrict artificial light pollution. Their purpose is generally to promote astronomy. In some southern regions of England, which would be northern regions of Galar, it's even possible to see Aurora Borealis from the DSPs. I know everyone must be wondering about that central portion of the map that I skipped over thus far. However, in order to give some context to that area, I'm first going to address the most distinguishable area on the map. At the northernmost point in Galar, we see what is without a shadow of a doubt the city of London. From the left, we can see Big Ben at the Westminster Palace, the London Eye. I wonder if the London Eye Ferris wheel will function anything like the Ferris wheel in Pokémon Generation 5. The London City walls, though it should be noted that these in-game versions are not destroyed, whereas the actual London City walls can only be found in segments around the city. We also see a very large tower in the center, which is likely a reference to the Shard, which is the tallest tower in London. However, this tower also has a round shape and a dome at the top, so it may also be drawing inspiration from a tower called the Gherkin, or the 30 St. Mary X. I'd also like to mention that we can see 5 light blue inclines ascending around the tower in what I assume is a helix, but considering this is a 2-dimensional image and a helix is a 3-dimensional shape, I can't say for certain. With that in mind, I think this tower could be the Galar Pokémon League. Players would check in at the base of the tower where they'd find the usual lobby, Pokémon Center, and Pokémart. Then they would climb each inclined section of the helix ramp to reach a member of the Elite Four, followed by the 5th one to the champion. Imagine a dynamic zoom-out shot as you climb the helix on the outside of the building. Of course, that's going to depend on how the camera in this game actually works. We didn't see enough evidence in the reveal trailer to say for certain if it's fixed on all sections, or if you'll have some modicum of control. There was only one shot where the camera actually panned around the player, but that's easily explained away as a developer tool, and so we may likely be having fixed camera shots despite this being a home console game. I do have one alternative theory about what this tower could be if it's not the Pokémon League, but that's something to be addressed at the end of the video. That being said, we have one other landmark in this town, being that red dome on the right. It has the same red and blue stadium symbol as the other gyms. Considering this appears to be the final town that we can reverse to, it would be weird for it to be the 8th gym. We've never had a precedent of another Pokémon game where the 8th gym was in the same town as the Pokémon League. The team did express a desire to try new things during the Pokémon Direct, so perhaps this is truly a gym that breaks the norm. Or perhaps my alternative theory about the tower will come into play, and this will instead be the Pokémon League location that just shares a symbol with all the gyms. If we head to the south of London, we'll see a small passage through the mountains. It can be entered by train, but then we must walk the snow-ridden path to reach London. Considering they are outside London, these mountains are likely the Chiltern Hills, once again being portrayed as they would look in the winter to diversify the biomes of the region. Since the mountains are named the Chilterns, they likely made the region chilly as a play on words with the chill prefix. Again, the designers seem to take a literal approach with their naming conventions in this game. Apart from being the mountain range nearest to London, there is other evidence that allows us to narrow these mountains down to the Chilterns. On the southern border, we see a feature known as an escarpment. An escarpment is a long, steep slope, especially one at the edge of a plateau or separating areas of land at different heights. Furthermore, we know this has to be a mountain range through which a train can pass, and there are indeed a number of pathways that the train can take to tunnel through the Chilterns. Finally, the path that we walk to get from between the train station to London itself is likely based on the popular Ridgeway Trail, one of the larger paths that people can choose to walk or bike through the mountains. Could we be seeing a return of bikes in this game? I'm not convinced that we would. We definitely don't have enough evidence for it, but if there was one trail where a bike would make sense, it would be this one. Alright, I've kept you waiting long enough. It's finally time to make some theories about that ominous-looking place on the map. In central Galar, we see a town, if you can call it that has been walled off. The front wall features a large dragon head, which I assume has an opening in its mouth through which we enter the area. There is another dragon atop a tower on the left, and a more conspicuous-looking tower in the center of everything. All this appears to be over water. Now, the reason I wanted to go over the city of London before we came back here is because, believe it or not, my best theory for what this city is another version of London. Namely, I think it's the ancient Roman settlement in the area of Westminster, London, formerly known as Londinium. Allow me to explain the connections. We've seen a number of literal naming conventions so far, including plays on words like Snowdonia and the Chiltern Hills. This, I believe to be based on the Waterloo barracks. Since there's water underneath of what appears to be barracks, it's another play on words, literally the Waterloo barracks. The barracks themselves were built in the year 1845, originally used to house 826 soldiers, which explains its large size. It was the largest building of its fortress, but I'll have more to say on what this fortress is in just a little bit. What really sold me on the idea that this was ancient London is the dragon insignia. You see, the London coat of arms is actually based around two dragons holding a shield. And we see exactly two dragons visible on the map, the one on the front wall and the one on the tower. This means that that dragon tower is likely a gym, even though it may not look like it, and even though we can't see the stadium symbol. But then again, this could be easily hidden or just left out of this version of the map. We do see a small outdoor arena outside the tower, however, and that leads me to believe that this is based on the Roman amphitheater. The battles may very well take place outside, being based around the gladiator games or chariot races. Now, as for that really big tower in the center of the barracks, I have an interesting theory about that one. These barracks were known on the international level to hold the Tower of London, or previously the Martin Tower. These towers have been used to hold the crown jewels. What we see at the top of this tower is known as a crown steeple. So I believe this is a fictional, more exaggerated representation of the tower that holds the crown jewels, being formed by a scepter with a crown on top. Now this has larger story implications as well. Could our evil team be motivated to get whatever these jewels are? Are these merely valuable stones like there are in the real world? Or, since this is the world of Pokémon, are they more powerful than that? Could they actually be new megastones or Z crystals? Only time will tell. Nowadays, modern London actually holds a festival which features the gladiator games in honor of its ancient Roman heritage. This takes place outside of Guildhall, which I've taken the liberty of picturing at the top left. Inside the actual hall, you can find an art collection and the ruins of the amphitheater. This is the largest medieval crypt in London. Finally, as one last little extra detail to fully solidify my theory, there is a bridge on the left side of town. That bridge would be the Waterloo Bridge. And as for what the Waterloo Bridge is going over, that would be the River Thames. We saw a river earlier on the map, which I equated to the River Avon. It would be weird if a river as large and prominent and famous as the River Thames was completely left off this map. And if this body of water is not part of the River Thames, then I'm not sure where else it would be. Now, while I think I've drawn strong connections between that town on the map and ancient London, I have to admit it's not the most sound theory. Why would they use the same city twice when they have an entire country to work with? Why would they put two versions of the same city on opposite sides of a mountain range? It doesn't quite add up despite the connections being there. As I continued my research, particularly looking into the Chiltern Hills and any tunnels that run between them, I came across one other possibility, though I don't feel as strongly about it. That being said, I am going to share it here regardless for the sake of comprehensiveness, and let you decide for yourselves what you think. When I did my research, I found something called the Birmingham Snow Tunnel. I wanted to know if the tunnel that we saw going through the escarpment leading to the snowy pathway could be that exact tunnel. But if that was the case, the city would have to be based on Birmingham. And sure enough, as I kept digging, I found a black and white photo from the year 1731. There is something very interesting in this photo. What, you don't see what I'm talking about? Let's zoom in. Yes, the top of this tower matches the shape of the crown steeple at the top of the tower on the map. As for the large central building, we see 3 rows of windows layered atop one another. Based on this picture from Birmingham after the Blitz in 1940 during World War II, it appears to be the Bullring Central Market. However, I could not find any connection between the Bullring Market and the tower from the 1700s photo. So, this might be Birmingham simply because they wanted to use another city. And back when we were in Wales, we saw World War trenches not too far from this same city. So this could be their way of representing the World War era of Britain's history. That being said, the connection to dragons is not nearly as strong as it was for ancient London. Birmingham does have a Chinese quarter that developed after the World War that holds a dragon festival every year in honor of someone who died in the war. It seems strange to me that they would base the city's appearance on what it was like before the Blitz, while making direct reference to a cultural event that happened only after the Blitz. Also, if the city is inspired by its 1900s appearance, why is the tower seemingly only from the year 1731? Admittedly, there are a few other landmarks in Birmingham that they could have drawn inspiration from. The Dragon Tower on the left side does bear a resemblance to the St. Martin's Cathedral. This cathedral also tells the legend of St. George slaying a dragon back in his day. But then again, that's a tale that's spread all across the nation. It's not exclusive to this one church, so that argument is not as strong. Finally, I did mention that the water under the Waterloo barracks was probably the River Thames. But instead, if this is indeed the city of Birmingham, it would then be based on moats that used to be around Birmingham Manor. In the modern-day city, those have been filled though the city does still boast a number of canals. But again, if this is a representation of Birmingham of the past, those moats wouldn't be filled anymore, hence why we see them. I do find it weird, though, that the River Thames seems to be absent from the map if this is indeed the city of Birmingham. On top of all this, I have one other reason to believe that it is Londinium instead of Birmingham. It's actually the walls. Now, it's true that a section of Birmingham by the name of Coventry had city walls, but based on this picture of the ruins that we see, I do not believe that the shape matches up quite right. The walls we see on the map have round turrets, and there's over 12 of them. The Coventry city walls, on the other hand, have these more square turrets, and I don't believe that a section of a city being surrounded by walls is enough inspiration for the entire city to be surrounded by walls. With that, I feel like I have given my thoughts on every major city and some routes that we've seen along the way. Anything else on the map is a little too non-specific for me to get into. That being said, we're not done here. There are some places we need to revisit, and some more story theories that I wish to present. First off, I left behind this painted slate at the top of the mountain. At the top of the highest peak, we see a stone slate with drawings of what appear to be flowers and a shield. No, not the shield from Shield Knight. I searched for something that resembled this slate for a long time, and just came out empty. Whatever this painting is, it must have more significance in the game world than it does in the real world. I have a few theories. Each of these are starting to get to be larger stretches, but please bear with me. There appears to be a small hole towards the bottom of that painted slate. This likely leads to a cave. Again, I mentioned the 3-county cave system earlier, which is the largest in the land. Plus, the idea of having the 3-county cave system fits in with having the 3 peaks. The system of caves eventually led me to the beach caves, and of all the caves that I looked at in my research, this was the only one I could find that was covered in graffiti. I have not shown a picture of the graffiti itself in order to keep this video family friendly, but just know that it's there. The area is known for supposedly being haunted, so perhaps this cave is actually where we can acquire ghost-type Pokemon for our team. After all, I didn't really come across any other area that stood out as being haunted to me. My other theory, however, does also point to the cave holding ghosts. It's actually based on the nature of what is painted on the slate. The combination of flowers and a shield got me to thinking, what if this cave is meant to act as a shield from the flowers? But why would you need a shield to defend yourself against a flower? Well, I was reminded of the story of Pokemon X and Y. Now, I'm not the first person to think that Galar may have been the region that opposed Kalos in the war. But how did that war end? Well, X and Y spoilers alert for anyone who cares, but a character by the name of AZ wanted to revive his Floette, the flower Pokemon, and did so by stealing life from the Pokemon armies. What if this cave was used as a burial ground to protect the souls of Pokemon who lost their lives to that flower? Supporting this idea further is the flower in the upper right behind the shield. It's small, but it has 2 orange antennae, much like those found in the Floette family of Pokemon. I do have one other theory about this painting, but it requires my theory about the game's overall plot in order to make sense. So we've reached the point where I think, based on what we've seen on the map, we can figure out the evil team, their name, and their motivations. To recap what we know thus far, Your trainer comes from a small countryside home and winds up visiting areas inspired by different times in history. Possibly ancient Rome, the Industrial Revolution, even prehistoric sites full of megaliths. In one shot from the trailer, we see what appears to be a professor's lab, and they seem to be studying plants on the left. The region as a whole is also teeming with nature. Natural stone monuments, large bodies of water, national parks, rolling green hills, even plants growing on the houses. This is why I believe the evil team is working to go against everything we've seen in the region, and that they want to modernize Pokemon training beyond even the TMs that we have today. They may possibly go so far as to make genetic or cybernetic enhancements, quote-unquote, to Pokemon. It could even be similar to what happened with Mewtwo in Generation 1. Now this brings me to the name of the evil team. Aside from Generation 3, which had Team Aqua and Team Magma, the evil teams have historically been named after things found in the cosmos. Team Rocket, Team Plasma, Team Galactic, Team Flare, and the Ether Foundation. So, I focused my attention on other things they could draw inspiration from in outer space. A nova is an explosion from the surface of a white dwarf star in a binary star system. These explosions can push matter into star-forming regions. In other words, the explosions that result in the destruction of one old thing can also help to form something new. As such, if this evil team is indeed trying to modernize the region, I believe that Team Nova is a suitable name to represent their values. They're willing to destroy the old to bring in the new. The most modern city we see on the map was modern-day London at the northernmost point in Galar. Perhaps this team is an ongoing threat for the duration of the game, and just before we take on the Pokémon League, we need to take down their high-tech headquarters somewhere in the city. In fact, while we were in London earlier, I mentioned one alternative theory in the event that the giant tower did not belong to the Elite Four. Well, what if instead, the Red Dome does indeed belong to the Elite Four in the Pokémon League, but the giant tower belongs to our evil Team Nova. They'd be an ongoing threat all the way up to the end of the game, and we'd likely have to take them down before challenging the League, not unlike the events at End's Castle in Generation 5. Now we have enough context on where I stand with the game's plot for my final theory about that mysterious mountain painting. Not long ago I posed a theory that it could be a line of defense from the Floette family. But what if instead it actually represents a line of defense for everything in nature? Perhaps the shield is there to protect flowers, a symbol of nature in general, from the evil team's attempts to pave over it. Perhaps inside the cave we'll even find a group of activists who are fighting against Team Nova, and we'd be offered a chance to join or support the group. If you made it this far, then congratulations. You're just as crazy about this map as I am. But in all seriousness, if you're hearing this, and I just want to say thank you for sticking with me all the way through this speculation. It feels good to know that I may have piqued someone's interest somewhere. I know this video is very different from my usual content, and it took me several weeks of research, scripting, and editing in order to make it. If this is the kind of content that interests you, feel free to let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and consider subscribing if you like video game music remixes, gaming stream archives, or any other random projects like this. I've linked some of each on this end screen. And until then, bye!